Right, hello guys, welcome back to another video. In today's video, we're going to be talking about the new best strategy to reach wave 50 on Legend Onslaught. Now, I will say this strat is a little complicated, but I promise to explain it plainly. So first of all, contrary to my previous video, the best map for efficient 50 farming is Midtown, not Vostok. So why is this? Well, Midtown is a smaller map, which means the enemy spawns are more compact, plus the terrain is a lot flatter, which will enable easier ad pathing towards you or the ADU. These factors make the ad killing experience a lot more efficient, especially on Midtown compared to Vostok, where the terrain is a lot more hilly and uneven, which makes things a little bit slower in general. By playing on Midtown and using this strategy, my team and I achieved a 47-minute full Legend Wave 50 clear, and I'll tell you exactly how to do this in today's video. So, what is the team comp? The team comp is one Cenotaph Warlock, as you can see here, and two Hunters swapping between Orpheus Rig and Starry to Scales. I'll have more info on the Hunter builds in just a moment, because we're going to start with the Warlock, but just so you know, all of the builds will have dim links in the description. Right, so let's start with the Warlock builds. With the Warlock builds, we're going to have two builds, one which is defense and one which is damage oriented. You don't really need the damage oriented one, but let's go over the defense one first. So I'm going to go over the sort of subclass elements and weapons and armor in order, but as you can see, this is a Cenotaph build. I'm sure you guys are familiar with what Cenotaph does these days. You mark an enemy with a trace rifle and it spawns heavy ammo for your teammates if they are the ones to kill it. Obviously, we're going to be running Well of Radiance, which is quite nice for sticky situations like Tormentor Augments or Demolitionist bosses, and you know, on boss waves as well, it's quite nice to have a Well of Radiance. The abilities are kind of down to personal preference. I always like to run Phoenix Dive. You can swap this out for Healing Rift if you really want to. Celestial Fire is just to have a nice ranged scorching option, and I like to run Solar Grenade because, you know, why not? Aspects, I have Touch of Flame and Icarus Dash. These aren't too important. I just like Icarus for the movement and Touch of Flame for the nice grenades, and you'll know this will be more relevant for the damage build. Then Fragments, these are the ones that are probably more important. I like to use Ember of Singeing just to get my class ability back faster, Ember of Ashes to apply more Scorch, Ember of Benevolence to get my abilities back faster just by applying Cure to my teammates with my Phoenix Dive, and then I have Ember of Empyrean if I ever get a Restoration loop going. Chances are I probably won't, but this is just here in case I want to extend Radiant as well. You can swap this out for something like Ember of Resolve if you really want to, but yeah, it's kind of up to you. Weapons wise, this is where it's actually more important. Obviously, we need a Trace Rifle to work properly with Cenotaph. I like to use a Trace Rifle in the top slot because, as you can see here, I like to use Indebted Kindness as my main ad clear weapon. And unfortunately, we don't have a Rocket Sidearm in the Kinetic slot, not until Final Shape at least, so this is what I'm sticking with. I also have a Supremacy on standby. This is specifically for Tormentor Augments and boss waves. So basically what we would do is that if a Tormentor spawned, I would immediately run away, place my well, and I would go into my inventory, swap to Supremacy and swap to Div. Now, what this would let me do is it will let me break the shoulders a lot easier with Supremacy, and then when the shoulders are broken, I would apply Div to the Tormentor and my teammates would shred the rest of his health. I'll just play a clip now to show you how fast that process can actually be. So yeah, so once the Tormentor is dead, I would then swap back to my Trace and my Indebted Kindness. And then in my heavy slot, I have an Apex Predator, just if I want to have a really nice burst into a group, sort of one and done, get rid of a group that kind of leaks through tethers or something like that. You can swap this out for a machine gun or even a sword if you really wanted to, because the Warlock itself is not going to be doing the bulk of the ad clear. That's where the Hunters come in. The role of the Warlock is more of a support player, but I just like to have the rocket on in case there's a big group that needs dealing with. But I do occasionally swap to the sword for some other techs that you'll see in just a moment. So that's it for the weapons. Let me just quickly go over the mods. Helmet, I have Arc and Solar Siphon just to make orbs with my Indebted Kindness and with my rocket when I occasionally choose to use it. Powerful Friends to occasionally increase the armor charge of my teammates. I like using an Arc Loader to make Indebted Kindness more consistent. These mods here don't really matter. I have a Solar Reserve to get an extra rocket. The most important mods though are Arc and Solar Scavenger, because you'll be using your Indebted Kindness for ad clear quite a lot and you'll be burning through ammo quite a lot. And also, side note, if you have an Indebted Kindness with Appended Mag, it actually increases the total reserve ammo you can carry. Normally without it you'd get 46, but with it you'll get 50. So, you know, just a tip there, if you have one with Appended Mag, do equip it because it'll give you more ammo. So yeah, we have Arc Scavenger to get the most out of bricks when picking up ammo, because, you know, we're going to be marking lots of targets, so we're going to be making lots of special ammo for ourselves, so we should never really run out of ammo. But if we do, that's why we have Special Finisher on our class item. If we're ever in a pinch and there's no bricks nearby and we need some ammo as soon as possible, we can just do a Special Finisher and it will give us that very nicely. So just the two most important mods really are Special Finisher and Arc Scavenger. Scavenger, and Solar Scavenger. And then finally, for the artifact, we have all of the classic solar mods, you know, Kindling Trigger, Flint Striker, Torch, Revitalizing Blast, Overload Rocket if we ever get a Fallen round, and we need that for Overload Captains, and then Argent Ordnance for increased damage on bosses and augments. So that about does it for the defense build. Now let's quickly gloss over the damage build. Now, because you have a rally flag every time you go into a boss wave on like 10, 20, 30, you might as well use this opportunity to optimize your build. Because you have a rally flag, you can of course have a solar reserves piece on, or a triple reserves matching your heavy to give you the most heavy ammo going into the fight. So what I would do, I would swap to my loadout, I would swap to my reserve piece, then rally, get the most ammo, then swap off. This loadout, I also have it swapped to the supremacy for damage just to get a little bit of extra chunk. And specifically for the Warlock, I like to use Apotheosis Veil because the damage phase in the boss wave is infinite. So you might as well try and pad your total damage as much as possible. And with Apotheosis Veil, you can throw around 4 or 5 Celestial Fires and Fusion Grenades before the buff runs out, which is just a little bit of extra free damage on top of all of your weapons. So, you know, you might as well. And obviously I have surges and time dilations on here as well. But like I said, the dim link will be in the description, so don't worry too much about the specifics. But the main thing is swap to Apotheosis Veil because you might as well, you know. So we kind of glossed over this already, but what is the role of the Warlock? Well, simply put, you're just there to make ammo for your hunters. Because as we'll go over shortly, hunters are going to be abusing Xenophage because especially this week there is Overcharge Machine Gun and Overcharge Sniper Rifle on the activity, which means they're going to be doing 25% bonus damage, which is pretty huge, especially with Xenophage with the group ad clear that it's able to do. And I believe scavengers are currently bugged with Xenophage, meaning when you pick up a scavenger brick made by Cenotaph, you get around 11 bullets for Xenophage, which is about 1/3 of the total reserves. And because of the amount of yellow bars there are, the amount of ammo the Xeno user is going to be printing just means the hunters will never run out of Xeno ammo at all. So yeah, the role of the Warlock is to simply just mark as much stuff as possible and provide special finishes for yourself and the team if the team is ever running low. And obviously when it comes to boss waves like Tormentors or Demolitionists, you just place a Well of Radiance to kind of keep everyone alive and healthy. And just for those that didn't know, the augment rounds appear on the 3s and the 9s. So for example, on wave 3, 9, 13, 19, 23, 29, etc. So yeah, that about sums it up for the Warlock builds. Let's just move on to Hunter now. So the Hunter builds are a little more complicated, but I'll try and explain it as best as possible. So when the activity starts, you're obviously going to want to be on a Void Hunter. And in my previous video, I mentioned that you should use a build with Falcon's Halberd. Now, this isn't the case anymore, as it's been discovered that Orpheus Rig is now the move for sort of locking down groups of ads and killing them all in one fell swoop. So the reason you're starting the activity on Starry to Scales is because outside of the ability to give more damage to your super, it also gives you more super energy when you pick up Orbs of Power. I believe it's around 2%, and this does add up, especially when you're making lots of orbs with the methods I'll describe in just a moment. So you should have 2 builds on standby, one with Starry to Scales to collect orbs, and another with Orpheus Rigs when it comes to the time to place your tether down. So as far as abilities, aspects, and fragments, you're obviously going to want to be using Shadow Shot, the Deadfall version, and then for abilities, I like to use Marksman Dodge. We also have Snare Bomb, Scatter Grenade because it does a lot of single target damage, Vanishing Step, and Stylish Executioner. You could swap Stylish Executioner for Trapper's Ambush if you wanted to have the quick fall, but this is kind of up to you. It doesn't really matter. The thing that matters most is just having the super available at all times. Fragments wise, this is where your orb generation comes in. Echo of Vigilance is just here to give a bit of extra survivability because generally the hunters are going to be playing more aggressive than the Warlock is because they're going to be right up in the enemy's faces, trying to spawn trap them as much as possible. So this is just if you get into a sticky situation, gives you a bit of extra HP. Then we have Echo of Starvation, which obviously gives you Devour when you pick up a Void Breach or Orb of Power, which you're going to be making lots of. You guys know the deal with Devour. It's very strong. You get health back on every kill. It's very nice. Then we have Echo of Reprisal, which gives you even more super energy when you're surrounded by enemies. So when you're killing enemies surrounded by other enemies, it's going to give you a bunch of super energy, which is nice to feed into your tether more and more. And then we have Echo of Harvest, which is going to make it so defeating weakened targets creates an Orb of Power and a Void Breach, which will feed into Echo of Starvation. But the main thing is, like, you might be asking, how am I going to be weakening targets? The only thing that is going to be able to weaken here is Snare Bomb. Well, it also counts with Tether. So tethered ads count for Echo of Harvest. So every ad that you kill, it is on a cooldown, but most of the time the ads that you kill in a tether will keep dropping orbs and Void Breaches for you to pick up and keep your Devour loop up as well. Then we have the weapons. Now the weapons are quite important here. You're going to want a option that has Shoot to Loot. I have a Vulpecula here that has Shoot to Loot Explosive Payload, which is a nice combo that makes kind of picking up the bricks a lot easier. You don't have to be as precise with Explosive Payload, but you could swap this out for a Trace Rifle with Shoot to Loot in the energy slot and then swap out a Sniper in the kinetic. I've opted for a Twilight Oath here, and personally I prefer a weapon with lower zoom to use for Shoot to Loot, but it doesn't really matter. The main thing is you need a weapon with Shoot to Loot that has some sort of anti-champion capability. Obviously, because this is a hand cannon, it lets me stun Unstoppables, and then a Sniper Rifle, especially this week because of the burn, but in general to deal with Tormentors and high health enemies from a distance. You're not going to be using this weapon a lot, so don't worry about it. If you're going to be using Xenophage most of the time, so yeah, speak of the devil, Xenophage is going to be the main weapon you use for ad clear all the time. Do not be afraid to spam it, that is the whole point. You need to spam Xenophage to kill the ads as quickly as humanly possible. And then your Warlock is going to come in, mark the enemies, and that's when you use your shoot to loot weapon to load the ammo and load Xenophage. Because remember, shoot to loot works not only on ammo but on orbs as well, so you can use the orbs to kind of feed into your surges and also your devour loop. Plus, it also reloads all of your weapons for you, which means you'll never have to do the long reload animation for Xenophage. You can just shoot to loot a brick and it will be done instantly for you, just like that. So yeah, the main points: shoot to loot weapon, precision weapon for tormentors, and then Xeno to deal with everything else. As far as armor and stats goes, you want to have 100 resilience, obviously. Having high intellect helps as well, as it will decrease the cooldown of your super even more, and then discipline to kind of spam more scatter grenades. On the helmet, we have Dynamo to give you a bit of super energy when you dodge near targets, Solar Siphon to make orbs with Xenophage, and then I just have a solar loader for the sniper, stasis loader for the hand cannon, a single surge with a scavenger. Again, scavenger very important here because it's seemingly bugged with Xenophage right now, giving you a ton of ammo. Surge just for 10% damage, powerful attraction to make picking up orbs a lot easier, and then time dilation to increase the length of our surges, and special finisher if we ever need to get a little bit of special ammo for God knows whatever reason. So yeah, for the hunter, the artifact doesn't really matter. The only thing that matters really is just the anti-champion mods that you have. So having unstoppable hand cannon here is quite nice. So yeah, that's it for both of these builds. They are literally identical, but both just have a different piece on, so Star Eaters and Orpheus. And then when it comes to damage, you could have a loadout available with Celestial Nighthawk, as again, because you have a rally flag, you're going to get all your super back anyway, so you might as well swap classes to something that is a little more powerful. You can also have a loadout with Lucky Pants available with something like a Warden's Law, but again, that's totally up to you. So what is the role of the hunter? Well, this is the most important role because you're basically going to want to be tethering every single round. One player isn't going to be able to do this, but that's why you have two hunters, because you can alternate every round, and the tethers themselves need to go in very specific locations. I'll actually throw up a map on screen here, and as you can see, the blue, red, and green dots represent the locations where it is most optimal to drop a tether depending on the ADU spawn location. Using these spots, the ads enter your tether very quickly, which lets you dispatch them again very quickly, which massively speeds up the wave clearing process. Because we're using Xeno here, we can literally one-shot every single ad and shred through them. So yeah, the whole point of this strategy is just to spawn trap the ads as much as possible, and then using Xeno to shred through them as quickly as possible. You're going to be one-shotting most of the ad waves, except some of the chunkier yellow bars, but for them, again, it only takes around 3 to 4 shots to burst them down. So generally, the move for the hunter would be start the activity with Star Eater scales, and then once you have your super, swap to Orpheus Rig, put the super down, wait for it to reach 50% on your super bar, and then after that's done, swap back to the Star Eater scales loadout, and then pick up any orbs that are on the ground, and by the time the next wave starts, you should have your full super back, or should be close, or at least your other teammate should have his, so that you can keep the cycle going on and on. If you wanted, you don't actually have to swap to Star Eater scales, but it does speed up the process of getting your next super, and in a pinch, if you both need to use your tethers for whatever reason, it does enable you to get it back a lot faster. But if you wanted, you can just stick with a single Orpheus Rig loadout to make things less complicated. So let's talk about some general strategy tips that help improve the pace of the run. First of all, save all of your scrap to wave 40, and once you come back from the wave 40 boss, max out the final ADU location in one fell swoop. The reason for this is just to make sure you have as many good defenses as possible at the final spawn, because the final spawn is the only thing stopping you from reaching that final 50 boss wave. If you wanted, you could start upgrading defenses at wave 30 if you don't think you can manage without it, but with the way you're able to spawn trap ads, it really isn't necessary, as you'll notice that most of the time, none of them even get close to the ADU at all. Next up, when should the Warlock place a well? Basically, you should only really be placing a well on Demolitionist bosses and Tormentor augments, as well as the boss waves. The reason for this is because the other augments outside of the demo bosses and Tormentors are not very lethal and don't really need you to place a well or go out of your way to sort of improve the survivability of the team. Specifically for the Demolitionist bosses, place the well on the ADU and then prioritize them from either right to left or left to right, doesn't matter. And then for the Tormentor, run away to a location away from the ADU. You don't want it chilling on the ADU because otherwise it will tick down the damage massively. Like I said, mines, shielded demos, skybombers, and shielded skybombers are little to no threat to a full health ADU and should be prioritized last in the respective wave they appear in. For those augments, it's usually better to clear the ad waves first, then the special enemies, but you could do things on the fly. It's kind of up to you, it just depends. The thing to remember is that a tether must go down at the start of every round no matter what. Ad leakage is to be avoided at all costs, because if you do have ad leakage, it just complicates things. People start dying and you could risk the whole run if you don't have a tether down in time at the start of the round. It's very, very crucial just to make sure you have that tether always in the correct location. To kind of improve this process, it is handy to call out where the waves actually spawn, because, you know, at any ADU, there are 3 3 possible spawn locations for the ads, it's either going to be left, middle, or right. So it's handy to call this out so the hunters know in advance where to tether. Also, if you want to have a bit of fun, you can boost your spark carrier right to the end by right-clicking them with an eager edge sword if they stand right beside the door to the right-hand side. Okay, so that about does it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I wish you the best when going for these efficient wave 50 clears, and I hope I was able to explain it in a good enough fashion. So there we are. Thank you for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one. If you made it this far, thank you so much. Your support means the world. And if you're really into the content I create, consider becoming a member of the channel, which not only lets you support me in the best way possible, it also nets you a whole host of awesome perks along with it. A massive shout out to these members up on screen, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now, dear viewer.